Hey people, what's good? Mount Lethe Hellfire. Hope everybody's doing well. Today I'm going to talk about installing this primary arms 3 to 18 by 44 first focal plane with the Athena ACSS BRP-MIL reticle on the Mk12 Mod 3. Now, I've had one or two videos related to the Mk12 Mod 3 project, and it is just that, a project. This is not like an actual military issued build. I just really like the rail. I really wanted to get a Centurion, and yes, I know it's pronounced Centurion and not Kenturion. I was just playing too much New Vegas. Now, I wanted to assemble that kind of as if I were running a procurement program or if I was building on a small frame gasser, kind of a more modernized approach to the Mark 12 instead of, building it at NSW Crane in, the early 2000s. How would I do it? So you could go check out those videos about how I installed the barrel, the proper way to install an AR-15 barrel, the tools and methods that I use. This will be in the similar vein of tools and methods. I have gone out and shot this thing. It was on my Surefire can deep dive video as well, but I didn't really show any accuracy or nothing. I was just sending rounds downrange on paper to try to capture how different cans sounded on different barrel lengths. This thing is a tack driver. It's probably one of the more accurate barrels I owned, though no more accurate or any less accurate than the Douglas barrel that's on my Mark 12 Mod H or Mod Syria, whatever you want to call those. So this is kind of a tools techniques video as well as just another reason to talk about the gun. And I have a Trigger Cam 2.1 coming in a week or so, and hopefully I'll have some time freed up from work to hit the range and do some practical accuracy at 100 yards and show you what this thing is capable of, and hopefully stretch it out a little bit further as well for reference. So as far as the whole setup and orientation is concerned, this is the Tipton Pro or the Tipton Elite, but this Tipton adjustable gun vise is honestly really good for being rolled aluminum and injection molded plastic parts. And the next thing that I also have in addition to the gun mount is the Wheeler Engineering Professional Reticle Leveling System. So you could probably see there, and let me grab my stick of referencing. Over here, this gold brass thing, this is a reference level, and then this is the other reference level with it. The idea being that you more or less get your overall gun vise leveled, or you have it mounted to a level bench already. Then you level your gun in the gun vise, which is more important for the gun to be level, right? You just want this mostly level. And then when this is level, you attach this, which is clamped, and you could kind of see that here. I know the camera angle isn't the best because of how I'm filming this, but over here you tighten it and reference it to the barrel. If this was a bolt gun, you would get it near a fore end, but since this is a precision machined flat surface with the Geissele rail, at least you hope so, I more or less eyeball leveled this thing with the bottom of the Mark 18 SMR handguard, but I already had the gun leveled. Now the way that you check it is first you want to roughly level, you want to roughly level the Tipton, right? So obviously this isn't going to show level because I have it panned in a certain way, but I will start up and then you want to build your base up. The next thing you want to do, especially on this one, you have rotating ball heads around the rubber clamps, is to get the gun more or less leveled on, from side to side, right, on your x-axis. Once that's leveled, and, usually you want to go off of your mount if you think that your mount is more or less, a precision ground surface, and you hope it is, right? So you could maybe, well, you can't pick that up actually. You'll just have to trust me. So this is leveled front and back, but more importantly, you want to make sure that it's leveled side to side on the mount. Now this is important because this becomes your main reference. So once this is leveled out, hopefully you don't have to keep messing with everything, right? It's a little bit of an adjustment, and then at the end you could see here these knobs are adjustable to pitch or yaw this as needed. So you want this mostly level on the bottom, side to side level on the x-axis, and then front and back, straight on from the muzzle to the stock. You want to make sure that's leveled, recheck it, on your side to side, and then fine adjust it over here. So that's the overall process. And once you have a good level surface on your scope mount on a scope ring, I didn't use the rings because they're too far apart and they're ever so slightly chamfered down. Once that's good, and you have a good surface to reference it, you install this, and then at the top knob over here, you adjust this until this is showing level. So now essentially this is timed on your gun. Now, I've gone through a lot of different ways of mounting scopes. Now that everything is reference leveled, I didn't want to make you sit here and look through how I level this thing. It took me about 30 minutes to get everything good. You go ahead and take this boy off, and then you go and put your scope in. Now, I know roughly where I need this because I've been behind the scope, but you want to get behind your stock, look through it, make sure you have the proper eye relief. This has, as you can see, a Rock River Arms and RRA Entry Stock. Collapsed, this is about the same length with a standard buffer tube or buffer extension. It's the same length as a CTR. So if you have a Magpul CTR, Magpul MOE, and you had it collapsed all the way down, the RRA is the exact same length, and a SB3 for comparison is actually a little bit shorter. So there's about, an extra inch and a half, maybe 2 inches length of pull versus a fully collapsed SBA3. I know that the RRA Entry Stock is not really optimal for this, but the concept was like, hey, I want to try to keep the overall length short. I knew that I could comfortably get behind the gun. So, that's what I went with. Eventually, I'll probably rip this thing off and put it on something else. Maybe I'll swap it onto my 300 Blackout or put it on a 338 ARC if I ever get around to building one of those. Now, in the past, I've used different methods for leveling. I have these Arisaka Defense, or just Arisaka, I forget what they're called, the wedges, and there's another fat wedge here. Now, the issue with these is that not every scope mount is created equal. If you have rings, obviously you can't use this. This is meant for leveling scopes on ARs and cantilever mounts, except, you need to get it pretty much centered up with where all your turrets are at. And there might not be a completely level surface, or in the case of like the Reptilia AUS, there's a spine that runs underneath it. So you can't exactly get this thing particularly leveled. And then when you start to actually put your wedge down and get it leveled again, so you essentially push it down until it flattens out, as you start to torque down your different screws, you have to end up yanking this thing out, working its way out, and you might just kick it off a little bit off center. So I've used the mechanism of like putting it on a tripod, and my tripod has a bubble level on the ball head and a bubble level on the tripod itself, making sure that's evened out, mounting the gun if it had ARCA inside of it, and then hanging a plumb bob, a couple dozen yards away, and then using that to level the scope with it on max magnification. That does work, right? But it's tedious, honestly, and it's better if you had, a really rigid structure to strap your gun into, like a vise, and then use the plumb method. But the plumb method is great to check that your reticle is even. The other mechanism, like I mentioned, using the Arisaka Defense wedges, which, they work great with a Badger Com. They do not work with a Reptilia AUS, and they don't work with the Geissele. And for, cheaper stuff like this, they don't really work out all that well either. I tried to get the wedge in there and it just doesn't work. So coming back to the professional reticle leveling system, or the PRLS from Wheeler Engineering, now that I know that this thing is referenced off, the only thing you have to do is put your bubble level on the top turret and then rotate it until it is level, which I am doing now, obviously. That's showing level, and then you come back and then you reference the front and then make sure that is level as well. And at any point, if you mess it up, well, you have to go back and then reorient, re-level everything again. So once that is good, then you want to return with your actual scope rings. And the way that you do it is in a so-called X pattern. So you start, one top, and then you go diagonal, and then you go across, and you go diagonal. Now, when you do it, you want to make sure that the space in between each of them is roughly level. There's certain ways to do it. Like some people just tighten these all the way down and then tighten these all the way down until it stops, like finger tight, and then back it off. You don't want to mess with that too much while this thing is leveled on in here, because you can rotate your scope, especially if it's like bad ring. So you just want to make sure that you're not going to knock anything off level. And you could see here that gap that I was talking about, ever so slightly, right? Now it's closed. So you want it about halfway. You could use feeler gauges to get it precise as well, getting the maximum size on one end, and then you cut that in half and then get your half feeler gauge. I'm probably not going to do that. I'm just going to, more or less eyeball it from where it needs to be, and then get the other rings on top of there as well. Now for this, all you need to do is use a Torque 15. They come with a Torx wrench on it, but fix-it sticks, I think, are another thing that are well worth the investment. I got the AR fix-it sticks kit for real cheap on a flash sale from Amazon of all things. And then you'll either want Vibratite or some thread locker as well on it. So, and then the last thing you'll need is a torque limiter or a torque indicator like this 0 to 65. And this limiter is actually perfectly fit for this because the caps, the screws on the cap need to be between 15 and 25 inch-pounds, but these bolts down here, Primary Arms is calling for 65 instead of the, typically you see 45 to 65. So that's not too bad. So I'll use the full range of this for a change. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually get some Loctite into this thing. So I'll just get these guys tightened down. So you want to push the rings all the way down and then try not to disturb it. The rings are the belt. And get these things down as well. So I showed you do that until across over here. Let's see here probably. So if I do a little more. Yeah, I do not travel on either side of this. And the things you do put it out and keep rotating until it goes down, more or less. Just wait until it's tight, and then keep tight, and then reconfirm that you are whole, which I am. And then now you could start to tighten these things down on the X pattern. So half turn or quarter turn, half turn, quarter turn, skip across, half turn, quarter turn. And you just want to keep working your way around in that X pattern. And again, you don't want to put a bunch of torque on this. You want to go just a little past finger tight on each of them. And this is just small little finger length. And the other thing I forgot to mention is that when you mount this, Primary Arms actually recommended this being up as far up as you could get it and then push forward as you tighten it down finger tight, which it is. I'm confirming level one last time. And I'm good. So get the torque limiter on there. Then we're going to 15 to 25, and then I'll start in the back. I'll go about halfway between them. So about 20 inch-pounds, then across, and then the final X. You want to make sure you're, holding it nice and straight when you're actually applying your torque, because you don't want to strip these out. I'm assuming they're the most robust screws that Primary Arms is using inside of these to keep the cost down. But as long as you just take your time and do it correctly, you should have no issues. And then that's it. You just remove the other side of it, swing them out like this, and then just to show you, how you tighten it down. You want to more or less get this thing adjusted to what your barrel width would be. You swing that out, swing them in, adjust them, and then once this is flush against a reference surface, more or less, you use this screw for fine adjustments, and that's that. All right, folks, that is it. So this was pretty simple to install. As always, if you enjoyed the video, found it informative, found it entertaining at my expense or otherwise, please consider dropping a like, a comment, sharing the video, subscribing to the channel, or all the above. I really do appreciate it. I'm close or just past 200 at the time of this recording. It's actually kind of crazy. I just did this thing on a whim, and I'm trying to get better, better sound system, getting the trigger cam, and then eventually better camera setup and maybe a dual camera setup. But anyway, I plan to do a lot more videos on the Mk12 Mod 3 project. And like I mentioned, I have a trigger cam 2.1 coming in. So hopefully I'll get that in sooner than later, get some time out on the range just to zero the weapon, and then also do a companion reloading series along with this. I believe the community regs still say I can't show you how to make ammo, but I could talk you through different steps, not all together. So how I do my case prep, how you load, how you look for reference data and whatnot to do some Mark 262 Mod 1 clones. Stay safe out there, stay in shape. I'll see you in the next one. Mount Lethe Hellfire.